He was playing golf. The word we have is that he was playing golf when it happened. And this is some video of the president out playing golf. And when the network started calling it, I think CNN went first, and then sort of everybody called it all at once. And then Fox called it maybe 30 minutes later or so, something like that. And then everybody's just been kind of watching this all day. But the president heard while he was on the golf course, stayed on the golf course, we're told. We don't know anything about how the golf, there he goes. And then we have some pictures of him when he arrived back at the White House. You saw that scene there, thousands and thousands of people out cheering. Well, he drove past that on the way, and that's a photo that will, that'll probably be one that lives for a while. As he was going back in, 45, President Trump, the 45th president of the United States, going back into the White House. We've heard a little from him since then, but not a whole lot. CNBC's Kayla Tausche is in Washington following the president for us today. What do we know about golf and going forward to now? And then we'll talk about later.
Well, Shep, it was about 4 hours between when that original call came and when the president returned to the White House. He spent much of that time on the golf course and sort of enjoying the company that was with him. But privately, aides say that he was fuming, not just because of the call that was made, but also because of a perceived lack of support from those that were working for him, not only in the White House, but also on the campaign. And the campaign manager, Bill Stepien, and the deputy campaign manager, Justin Clark, tried to speak directly to that in a call earlier this morning with donors and organizers, where they urged supporters to stay at the ready to attend rallies and protests and fights for the president as he continues this legal challenge going forward, and sort of echoing the president's tweets and statements, even as questionable as some of those, the language in those have been, which is why we're not going to show them to you, but essentially trying to vocalize their support for the president in the way that he feels he wants to respond to this development. Staffers at the White House are acknowledging that the end of the campaign and the end of the president's tenure at this point sort of feels more like a whimper than a bang, and coupled with an air of frustration as well. Many of them are working from home, and there is a new wave of coronavirus inside the White House as well, with the White House Chief of Staff, Mark Meadows, and as many at this hour as 3 additional staffers testing positive. Many of them were already working from home. They were tying up loose ends when it became clear to them in recent days that the election was going to go in Biden's direction. Remember, Meadows in recent days has been around the president, not wearing a mask. He had been in the East Room for the gathering on election night as they watched the returns come in. So there is some caution about potential exposure among people who have even been on the complex at the White House. Senior administration officials say that as of today, there is still no discussion of a professional concession or an official concession. And that's in the president's inner circle as well. But Mick Mulvaney, the former chief of staff, writes in the Wall Street Journal, voters need the election to be fully litigated. The U.S. needs to know the winner is actually the winner. And once Americans know that, I have every expectation Mr. Trump will act and speak like a president should.
So we've been warning about the possibility of violence in the streets after this election. And for me, looking at 4 scenarios of a Trump blowout, a Biden blowout, a narrow Biden win, or a narrow Trump win, the most dangerous scenario to me was a narrow Biden win, particularly one in which Donald Trump claims it is rigged. And that is the situation that we are increasingly pointed to as Donald Trump's leads have slipped away in Pennsylvania and in Georgia as of this recording. And we are getting in the direction of having that serious risk of violence. Yesterday, we saw armed Trumpists showing up at various locations in Arizona. Many of you very interested in that story. Well, Donald Trump Jr. tweeted that Donald Trump needs to go to total war. Like many of the tweets being posted over the last couple of days by Donald Trump and Eric Trump and others, Twitter immediately tagged Donald Trump Jr.'s post as potentially misleading. But what he said is, quote, "The best thing for America's future is for Trump to go to total war over this election to expose all of the fraud, cheating, dead, no longer in-state voters that has been going on for far too long. It's time to clean up this mess and stop looking like a banana republic." And of course, Twitter flagged it, saying this tweet is disputed and might be misleading about an election. This is not what you say when you are winning. He's tweaking out. He's terrified because the entire family is worried about what happens if they are deposed. Is there are there criminal charges in their future? Is there prison time in their future? I don't think it's likely, but we know that they are scared. And this is really serious. Donald Trump yesterday saying it's all being stolen from us. Don Jr. saying it's time for total war. Remember, stand back and stand by? This is what they were standing by for. This could lead to significant radicalization of people to real world violence. Fox News viewer militia types had a plot to kidnap and murder the governor of Michigan. Tucker Carlson told millions of Fox viewers that if the media calls it for Biden when he wins Pennsylvania without checking for fraud for 2 full weeks, then it would be irresponsible and people need to think about what to do next. This is extraordinarily dangerous, and the terms blood in the streets are being thrown around. I am genuinely scared for what the next 2 weeks hold, and how irresponsible are these people to do it. And you know why they're doing it? Because they don't care. Don Jr. doesn't care if his tweet leads to violence. All he cares about is, how can we hold on to power? They're looking for piles of gunpowder in order to light a match and throw it over their shoulder as they walk away, plug their ears, and then say, listen, I don't know, lighting matches isn't a crime. There happened to be gunpowder where listen, so you got to talk to whoever left the gunpowder there, because the lighting of a match is not a crime. It's getting really bad. And we're also learning the extent to which Donald Trump over the last 48 hours may not even have understood what was going on. We are, however, seeing some Republicans very slowly, clearly for reasons of self-preservation, starting to jump ship a little bit with the wild fraud allegations that Donald Trump is making. I have 2 examples for you today. These are not good people. These are still people who deserve to never vote again, but work again. No, they can, I apologize. They obviously deserve to vote again. That's not what I meant. They deserve to never work again. We're going to start with former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie, backing off of Trump's voter fraud claims, which are, of course, bogus. Christie, a top ally of Donald Trump, helped is a loose term, but worked with Trump on debate prep. And yesterday, Chris Christie said, you can keep saying voter fraud. And if there's voter fraud, then we need to deal with it. But you've got to produce some evidence here. And Chris Christie starting to distance.
Chris Christie, it should not have to be said, counting absentee ballots is not illegal. It is not fraud. It is not corruption.
George, let's say I've been fortunate enough to be on the ballot a number of times myself. I've won, I've lost. And so as a candidate, you're even more invested in the integrity of the system. Right? So if this stuff is going on that the president's talking about, all of us want it ferreted out, because it would undercut everything that we believe in our system. But as a prosecutor, that's like asking me to indict someone without showing me any evidence. If you're going to say those things from behind the podium at the White House, it's his right to do it. It's his right to pursue legal action. But show us the evidence. We heard nothing today about any evidence. I want to know what backs up what he said so that I can analyze it. And let me tell you, if he's right, I'll be outraged, and I'm sure you would be too.
And if he's wrong?
And if he's wrong, then the American people are going to be able to make the judgment about this election that the results have been fair. And this kind of thing, all it does is inflame without informing. And we cannot permit inflammation without information.
So Chris Christie was maybe the first prominent actual Trump advisor to publicly confront Trump and say, what you're saying is not, at least as of now, backed up by evidence. It's inflammatory. He said he already won when he didn't. He's saying that there's fraud when there's no evidence of it. You've got to be careful with that. We then also heard from former Pennsylvania Republican Senator Rick Santorum. Now, he is not a Trump advisor and has even been a little lukewarm on Trump over the years. He is a Republican that you could reasonably describe as pro-Trump, although he has had some hesitations. He said it was just completely wrong for Trump to undermine public confidence in the election, declare victory, all of that stuff.
Rick Santorum?
No Republican elected official is going to stand behind that statement. I mean, none of them will. They will stand behind elements of that statement. They will stand behind his comment about the polling and how You could make the argument that it was suppression and dishonest. I mean, you can stand behind the lack of transparency when it came to allowing the votes to be counted. There's evidence of that, and he provided some evidence for that. There are certain things they will stand behind in that statement because they reflect the reality. But much of that statement was not factual and was at times incendiary and not something that President of the United States should say or any elected officials.
You said
unless you have evidence to prove it, and at this point in time we don't, and we won't until there is an investigation as to what happened. And I got to tell you, I sat there and I listened to him talking about the votes being taken away from him, and then he shifted to Arizona and said, hey, I win this thing if they count the votes. Well, how can you say, well, we have to wait and count the votes in Arizona and I can win this if we're making it, but if you count the votes in Philadelphia, you're stealing them. The reality is in Pennsylvania, Democrats voted by mail and Republicans voted by in person. And it's because you asked them to do so.
Shortly after Trump wrapped up that bizarre press conference, Santorum also said that the president's rhetoric was dangerous. And I think what's important to remember here is that these are not good people because they're doing this. Chris Christie supported Trump throughout the entire campaign and even helped to manufacture this exact situation. This is a really important point. Chris Christie now says, Trump's got to be careful. He's got to bring the evidence. Christie facilitated the current crisis situation, which Donald Trump has fomented. These people are merely trying to self-preserve, but they all need to go. And at some point, we'll put together a full list of these people. Chris Christie, Kayleigh McEnany, of course, Don Jr., Ivanka Kushner, Steve Bannon, the whole lot of them deserve to never work again. These are facilitators for the most dishonest and weaponizedly incompetent presidency that we have had in the modern era. I could probably say of all time, but let's just say in the modern era. And I hope everybody's been taking names. Let me put it that way.